Well, here we are again. It's always such a pleasure. If by pleasure you mean absolute garbage arts disappointment. You can't have the art community without a zest of plagiarism now, can you? Unfortunately, we're not just talking about someone stealing designs to sell as adoptables today, though, and while we have talked about good old Butch and his grubby little commission cheapskate hands, this is on a new level. Because today, instead of $200 to a Christian Mingle cartoon scammer, we're talking thousands of dollars from private collectors and government grants for numerous instances of blatant ripoffs and plagiarism. Hey-ya, yo-ya out there to all my big brothers, sisters, aunties, uncles, and of course, mommies and daddies. It's me, your bite-sized baddie and favorite little brother Mark. Just recently, an Argentinian artist by the name of Fatima Pechicaro was accused of plagiarizing work that she submitted to an art exhibition. BioCosplay reports, the Pechicaro exhibition at the Evita Museum is called Flags and Pennants, and has one of its central pieces called Void Ninja. This piece is another version of a previous work that shows a representation of Eva Perón with a sword while fighting a gorilla. According to the accusations, it would be a plagiarism of an image that dates back all the way from 2015. Now, looking at these three pieces side by side, the first piece by Caro is clearly a ripoff of the original by Soundless Wind, while the second one is at least a mostly different piece which uses the same pose and framing. Though, looking at the two, it does seem like aspects of it may have been directly traced. However, this specific ninja piece is unfortunately not the only work that Ms. Caro has been accused of ripping off. My fan art has been plagiarized. The plagiarist is an Argentinian named Fatima Pechicaro. This painting has already been sold to Museo Evita, a public museum, for a very high price. I don't know who she is, but please, don't buy her art. That is a tweet by the artist Agavo Art, showing their representation of Sunset Shimmer next to a very strangely well-lining up image of Fatima's. The Femininjas collection that the plagiarized paintings came from claimed to date back to 2017 through 2019, all made a good deal later than all of the images she allegedly copied. Now, it seems like Caro has removed accessibility to the Femininjas gallery from her site, though it's still quite easy to access with a direct URL. Though it is incredibly difficult to find exact dates, being that her site is set up like absolute ass, by turning to the Wayback Machine, we can confirm that the first instance of it being captured at the very least was on November 14th, 2019. The image of Equestria Girls Sunset Shimmer by Agavo Art dates back to November 2017 on their DeviantArt page. So, assuming Fatima isn't also lying about how long she's been working on the plagiarized collection, the timeline for her seeing the image and then copying it would certainly check out. But it's difficult to find any Facebook or Instagram or Twitter posts to get an exact date for when Caro posted this work, or any work, as she's been nuking all of her social medias and, as I mentioned, removing pieces from her portfolio site ever since these allegations arose to public eye. Because that's something that innocent people do. Soon after the initial tweet blew up on the 20th of June, people started coming out of the woodwork, showing how Fatima either plagiarized their own work or the work of others. From the looks of this collection, I would say that most, if not all of these, are blatant copies, or so heavily referenced that it starts to infringe on the copyright of the original fan artists. And, as mentioned earlier with her flagstone and pennants piece, she copied this one 2 entire times. But what does Fatima say? Surely when caught with this much evidence, it would only be right to come clean to at least referencing these pieces, right? Right? Well, unfortunately, we live in a hell world where people never like to admit their faults. So, Madame Kero, of course, says that the only reference present comes from these being inspired by anime and manga. Quote, I am being attacked by a lot of anime fans who call me a plagiarist for using manga references in my paintings. But, Fatima, you can't claim this is all just general anime reference. Especially not when all of the posing matches up exactly with already existing pieces. There is a difference between reference and copying. And almost none of these are, at least in my opinion, transformative enough to count as mere referencing. With a reference, the original piece should not be glaringly obvious through your new one. Not unless you're paying homage, in which case you give credit and note that it's homage or use something so well known that everybody understands. Like the Akira bike slide. You certainly don't then turn around and call the people asking if it is a reference rapscallions or heathens if that's the case. Some Fatima stans say that this is just fan art, but I'd like to argue that it is 1, very whack to make fan art of someone else's fan art, as with the case of all of these pieces, and 2, fan art, while a form of media that depicts another person's intellectual property in the case of characters and the like, does not equate to infringing on the copyright of other artists for their existing works by way of directly copying them or being derivative. Fan art itself is a tricky business, as for all intents and purposes, it is illegal to sell fan art and fan works. However, most companies and large creators allow it as it's free advertising, and it would not really be sensible to go around telling your fans that they will be sued for showing their adoration for something. This, however, does not work the same way if you're making fan art of another person's fan art. You are in that case directly infringing on the other artist's work and attempting to copy it in a way to try and fool the market into believing that the two works are the same. For example, a while ago I talked on my Twitter, go follow me, about having to send a DMCA takedown for some of my art that was reposted with a slight edit. The reposter's entire account was filled with images that they'd taken from places like DeviantArt and Tumblr and then stuck on a patterned background with minor changes like editing out my fucking watermark and adding the occasional color filter. This infringes on the copyright of my work, as such simple changes do not automatically fling it into the realm of fair use by way of being transformative work, the way that rappers or collage makers take bits and pieces from other artists to create something new. They took my entire piece and added minuscule changes, as well as removing my fucking watermark. I of course first asked the poster directly to take it down, noting that the post that they took it from literally asked for the work not to be reposted. But instead of being a civilized person and doing the sensible thing that's saying, "Oh yeah, sure, my bad," they deleted my comment and blocked me. Being that their post was quite literally derivative of my work, I was able to send a takedown on the grounds of it infringing on the copyright that I have on my own art. Similarly, making an exact replica of this picture of Sunset Shimmer and slapping it on a background that's perspective would need poor Sunset to have her legs lobbed off is also not really transformative enough to be considered anything but derivative and a copy. If I recreate the Mona Lisa and put her on a different background and try to claim it as an entirely original piece, nobody will take me seriously. If I duplicate a picture of Mickey Mouse, line for line, color for color, and slapped it on a cheap painted background, I don't think Mr. Walt Disney and his thousands of copyright drones would give me a friendly pat on the bum and a thumbs up. Instead of saying that her works were any sort of direct reference or even homage, Fatima doubled down and claimed that the only thing she's guilty of is being an anime fan who uses, quote, manga references, and that those nasty, rabid, Western anime fanatics are bullying and doxing her for it, and just hate to see a girl boss win. Though I have yet to see any evidence of that claim, I wouldn't doubt some Twitter users or Redditors would go so far as to dox her. Again, as always, I never support doxing. I'm just saying that none of the articles or other people on the internet have made any mention of her getting doxed. She then claims that the only reason she's being called out is because she's a strong woman, and the backlash for this thieving behavior is a tool to silence her. Kato is quoted to have said in a Pledge Time article, quote, "This is part of a type of violence that I receive as a woman, as an artist. It is political and psychological violence. It's a form of discipline, because tomorrow, maybe I'm going to be afraid to say something again." Just before deleting her Facebook. We love a gaslight gatekeep girl boss. Hell yeah. Man, woman, dude, whatever your gender is, does not fucking matter, and it's not the reason she's being called out. This isn't some big anti-feminism conspiracy created just to take her down because she's outspoken about social justice and politics vis-a-vis stealing from other people. But this claim is unfortunately easier to sensationalize because the first video calling attention to her stealing had its main tagline referencing that she's a feminist. Not saying that the video is bad or that it was wrong, because the tagline "Feminist Scams National Museum" is technically the exact thing that happened, so I'm not blaming that guy's video whatsoever for bringing light to this. I can't say one way or the other whether the video's contents were good or bad, being that I don't speak Spanish, and while I don't agree with anti-feminism if that was his stance when going about the video, I doubt a video being extremely polite about it would have prevented the articles like this one by Today in 24 that, in order to really simp for Fatima and give her the benefit of the doubt, go out of their way to try and demonize people calling her out by, like, saying the first Twitter thread was made by an atheist pro-choicer. While Fatima is a member of the feminist collective We Propose, I'm pretty sure the main reason that we have a problem with you, Fatima, is because you're a thief. Dead of ass. A thief who, by the way, earned thousands of dollars for her plagiarized works. Yes! Fatima's stolen works were allegedly held on the art brokering site artsy.net. Now, during the pandemic, the site became very popular in the Argentinian art community due to it hosting the virtual version of the art show Arteba, or RTBA, whichever, in 2020. But its popularity went so far as to have the Argentine Chamber of Contemporary Art Galleries sign an agreement for more than 600 artists and roughly 10,000 of their works from 34 separate galleries to be hosted on the site. It's entirely possible that the works were held on Artsy for this exact reason, as this screenshot implies. And this article by Infobay confirms that the works were up for sale on Artsy, as well as these now archived listings you can still find on Google. Though, after the plagiarism uproar, Kato's page was entirely nuked from the site, only leaving her profile. As there are no captures of this page on the Wayback Machine, and the site itself seems less than raring to make a statement on any of this, the topic of whether or not the sales of the plagiarized works will be nullified is currently unknown. While Agavo Art's tweet saying that the museum purchased the paintings is incorrect, as the museum itself didn't purchase any paintings for this particular exhibition, it is alleged that the site is where at least 2 of Kato's fraudulent paintings sold for roughly between 2.5 and 4,000 USD a piece. Now, you'll notice that I say allegedly there quite a bit. And that's because I have so far not seen any official statement citing how much the painting sold for, let alone if any of them were actually sold. Just that they were up for sale. What we do know for sure is that Kato benefited from a 50,000 peso, or roughly 2,500 USD, grant from the government to have her painting shown in the museum. Yes, you heard that correctly. Government funding paid for her copying skills and for other people's hard work. Now, this grant from the nation's Ministry of Culture, the Activar Patrimonio, or Activating Heritage Scholarship, was only intended to cover the costs of having her work curated in the museum exhibition. But that doesn't really make this any less of an L for the other artists. There were 347 applicants for this scholarship, but only 60 were awarded out. Infobay shares a quote from the museum general coordinator Aida Orcaranza. The exhibition was curated by Eva Grinstein, who won one of those 60 Activating Heritage grants from the Secretariat of Cultural Heritage of the Ministry of Culture of the nation, for the realization of the temporary exhibition. The money that was spent on Fatima's plagiarized and copied works came from this grant, meaning her stolen work was chosen above other artists who could have had the chance of their work being featured in a prominent museum without any cheating. Her copies got exposure in a popular museum thanks to the government funding, and even if it did not come directly from the government's hands, it still means that she was incentivized to keep stealing. This all really ticks me off, because even the ministry that gave the initial grant takes her side, saying that it's out of the museum and the ministry's jurisdiction to handle any of this, since these are private grievances, and further try to cover their asses by meekly saying that it is, quote, a pity that much of the artist's work is so similar to that of others. Yeah, similar. I can understand that it should be on Grinstein to make this right, being that she and her panel of judges chose Caro. And it sucks to be caught with your pants down because they didn't know enough to bother or see if any of the applicants for the grant were plagiarizers, but the ministry's response to all of this can't be described as anything other than political. Not only do they deny her work being wrong or plagiarism, the ministry commends her for dealing with the otaku harassment, praising this exhibition work of hers in particular. Quote, to cross otaku and Peronism, the artist erects a super heroine Evita, warrior and vigilante with huge and resolute eyes in vibrant colors. There are just so many works of hers that are plagiarized from other fan art, some more obvious than others, but it's just mind-boggling. Like, while some of these, I would argue, actually are a proper use of reference, others are just literal traces or copies with no credit given. I doubt that the artists will ever be compensated. It would take a lot of money and good lawyers, and would be a lengthy, worldwide copyright case that Miss Steely Hands would likely be able to outlast monetarily with the aid of her art theft blood money. Agavo Art has stated that they will be contacting the museum about having the copied piece removed, and other users have been contacting the minister on his Twitter page, so we'll just have to wait and see how that all goes. Best case scenario, the creators of the mobile game Sino Alice could possibly get her for plagiarizing the art of one of their characters here, but even that might not be worth their time or money. The only justice here is that Fatima will hopefully be blacklisted from selling more plagiarized works in the future. A Google document with all of the thus far found plagiarized works and their originals can be found in the description below. So, if you want to go and support the artists who may never see justice for this, please, go right ahead. The saddest part about this to me other than the artists who had their work stolen and credited to someone else's mediocre copy, is that Fatima isn't a bad artist by any means. Sure, some of her anime traits in painting are a little wonky. Her anatomy isn't great, and she doesn't seem to have a consistent style, but that stems directly from the fact that she purposefully duplicates the work of so many other people, and likely traces their work for her sketches as well, because some of these line up far too well. But if she just applied herself to honing her skills and creating her own style, I'm sure she could create her own beautiful, unique works. But until then, she's little more than a 14-year-old art thief on DeviantArt copying other people's pictures and blocking anyone who calls her out on it while saying that they're bullying her for being a minor. Only, in this case, she's nearly 40 years old and is trying to use new age feminism as her get-out-of-jail-free card. What do you think, though? Are these actually copied or plagiarized, or do you think that it's just reference, even if she doesn't say it's reference? Do you think it's fine to sell copies of other people's work for thousands of dollars? Let me know in the comments down below. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe if you want. As always, you don't have to, but if you do, I'll get to see you in my next video. I hope you have a scrapdangulous day. Later, skater.
I hope the track loses soon. If the track doesn't lose soon, I cannot record.